Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of our Natilik Living Showcase webinar. Today we're going to cover off everything around Cisco DNA Assurance. And we have Craig and Jan here with us again. If you missed it before, we had part 1 of our NDA Living Showcase webinar, which you can catch up on our YouTube page. So without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to the guys to dive in. I want to go from there.
Thanks, Hayley. So welcome back, everyone. So today we are going to spend a little bit of time recapping what we spoke about in the last webinar. So what is multi-domain architecture and what's Natilik's journey been with this technology. And then Jan's going to talk us through what we're going to demo today. After that, we'll do a little bit of theory, look at Cisco DNA Assurance and the AeroNet active sensors. And then after that, we're going to get into the demo and hopefully have time for a couple of questions at the end. So let's have a look at the recap. So in our first session a couple of weeks ago, we started off by reviewing, what is a multi-domain architecture and what is intent-based networking. So we looked at that. We looked at Cisco's solutions in this area and why we think they're important in today's networks. Then we looked at Cisco's 3 main offerings in this space. So we covered ACI in the data center. We looked at SD access for campus LANs, and then we spoke about SD-WAN for connectivity. After that, we looked at what Natilik's journey has been with multi-domain architecture. And so we started with ACI in our data centers, and we've just finished deploying SD access at our headquarters in London. And we also looked at our plans to roll out SD-WAN and how we're going to start to integrate all of these domains together. And the reason, we covered the reasons why we're doing this and why we think these deployments and these integrations are going to benefit us, both in our production network and in our showcase environments. So the rest of the last session was looking at the SD access fabric that we've deployed, why we designed it in the way we did, some of the challenges we faced when we were trying to roll it out, and how we went about the migration. And then at the end, Jan gave us a very quick demo of the graphical user interface from DNA Center, which was a bit of a sneak peek before today's main session on DNA Center Assurance. And then the last thing we covered in that session was the future of MDA at Natilik. So we've got some great ideas for building out our showcase environment, and we want our clients to be able to experience that either in person at the Natilik office in London or remotely via WebEx sessions. So as Hayley said, that recording is available on our YouTube channel. You can check out that video and many more if you search for the Natilik Group. So I'm going to hand over to Jan now. He's going to talk us through what today's demo is going to cover.
Thanks, Craig, and good day, everyone. So what do we want to demo today? And initially, we'll do a quick overview of the DNA Center graphical user interface and how it is divided. And we'll start by the main dashboard, and then we will rapidly cover the main 4 sections within DNA Center. And those are design, policy, provision, and assurance. Once we're done with the high-level overview of the graphical user interface, we'll check the main components of a SDA fabric, and that's just for you to have a clear understanding of our network for the following parts of the demo, in case you missed the last webinar. Part 3 and 4 are really the strong play in this session. As indicated in the slide, we will initially focus on Cisco DNA Assurance. We will go over a few features and dashboards to show you how easily DNA Center presents all telemetry and data to you, and what is more, how simple it is to act proactively or react to the data you are seeing with few clicks of the mouse. In the last bit, we will review the Cisco AeroNet active sensor, which can be seen as a subsection of the broader assurance piece that we will cover today, and aiding to assurance capabilities within DNA Center. Before jumping into the actual demo, as Craig mentioned, let's cover just the main element or the main theory behind this. So let's see what Cisco means by DNA assurance and why it's fundamental in any network deployment nowadays. Additionally, we want to talk to you about the active sensors. Some of you might be wondering what they are or why we should deploy them in the network. So answer to those questions will follow shortly, so let's just get into it. What is Cisco DNA Assurance? Cisco DNA Center can be summarized, I would say, as a single integrated system that provides two key sets of capabilities. One is automation, and the second one is assurance. Automation serves to support use cases such as the deployment of quality of service through application policy framework, or to speed up deployment of new sites through templates, or in general, as the name implies, it helps to automate and standardize our network configuration and policies among all of our sites. Assurance, on the other hand, is focused on extracting data from the underlying network infrastructure. So as I see it, and mind my perhaps oversimplification here, automation is about acting and pushing the config into the network, whereas assurance is about pulling the data from the network and analyzing it to understand the best way forward. As indicated in this slide, it starts with all the network telemetry and contextual data being pulled from various sources for all elements of the network. These include NetFlow, SNMP, syslog, and other network telemetry sources. Everything as a sensor is the premise here. Then comes the complex event processing that you see there. And that is nothing more than the platform organizing and correlating all the data from the different sources and trying to make sense of it. It is about cleaning it and presenting it in a nice and readable format. This is really where the magic starts to take shape. So, so far we have had plenty of telemetry sources in our networks, and for a while we also have had many nice graphical user interfaces from monitoring tools to go over all of our collected data. So nothing new so far with DNA Center, really. The problem is that normally, unless we run into specific issues and we find ourselves in the process of troubleshooting them, we rarely review such data or logs from devices, let alone try to correlate them with those of other devices and try to make sense of them. So this is what DNA Center aims to do and what we see as correlated insights. Then call it artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data. I mean, there is a bit of everything here. And what Cisco means with correlated insights is the processing and comparison from many different angles of all the data, not only from your devices and your network, but also with other networks and in many different contexts and with other devices in other networks. So what's the aim? The aim is to baseline your network behavior, and the system hopefully will learn what's normal. Perhaps it is that for any reason at 6 p.m. every Tuesday your network is slightly more overloaded because there is a global company meeting with all employees. It might be that X application usually generates a flow or a stream of traffic that goes from source A to source B and C specifically, but never the other way around. I think you get the concept here. How can you detect anomalies if you don't know what normal looks like in your network? Well, DNA Center can do that baseline for you too. From there, it will be able to differentiate normal from abnormal behavior by itself. The last part, naturally, is the suggested remediation. So let's say, okay, you got the data, you clean it, structure it, and then correlated it. You are now able to flag and detect unexpected events and potential issues. Well, DNA Assurance goes a step farther, and then automatically suggests some remediation, a set of recommended actions that should help you going back to the desired network behavior. So as everything involving artificial intelligence, and this is quite ambitious from Cisco, and you can argue that it is still far from being perfect. But as everything, I think, and the more data is generated and the more companies use this, the better the analysis and correlation will be, and the more accurate it will get. And at this stage, most of the insights and suggested remediations are based on known technical requirements for the various elements of the network, either to work on their own or to integrate it to the rest of the network. You will see more or less what I mean later in the demo. But those insights and automated anomaly detection and comparisons are still some sort of work in progress. I'm sure we'll get there, and that's the direction that the technology is heading to, really. So yeah, it's indeed very exciting times ahead, I think. So actionable insights. How do I put this? So in an ideal world, all network problems or issues will be solved proactively or dealt with automatically by DNA Center, with no interaction whatsoever from the network administrator. But we know very well that that's almost impossible. Well, at least while Morphy is around, and believe me, he's always around, there will always be issues and problems with your network, and users will still call to complain or to ask for a fix. You will see in the demo that DNA Center is also an extremely good tool for network troubleshooting and maintenance, saving IT admins a lot of time. You can get granular data concerning the events of a specific place or device, a user, an application, to help you isolate the problem. Then not only that, but you can also go back in time for up to 14 days to replicate the state of the network. So let's just imagine that a user complained because couldn't get into the network and raised a ticket, which you are looking into 3 days later. Now you can go back in time and see if you can detect anomalies at the time that the user experienced those. If that's the case, you will actually increase your chances of finding out what the issue was and take appropriate actions to either mitigate it or to avoid it altogether going forward. The system will also learn and record which network state produced a specific issue. So it will be able to predict the issues before they happen, hopefully, just by following the trend of the network. Finally, you can act in the way you consider appropriate based on the events. So you can even automate your responses, config changes, or actions to recurring issues. And this is more on the automation piece rather than the assurance that we're talking about. But it's just for you to see how the loop is closed with DNA Center and how DNA Center contributes to a live network that is in continuous improvement and evolution.
Thanks, Jan. So now we've taken a look at what DNA Assurance is. Let's talk a little bit about the active sensors. So the AeroNet active sensors, they're a compact network sensor, and they're designed specifically to monitor the wireless network. They're not much bigger than an iPhone, and they look they're aesthetically pleasing. They can be installed pretty much anywhere, so they can go on desks, on walls, ceilings, wherever it's convenient in your campus. And also they can be mains powered or they can be driven by power over Ethernet. As the slide says, the idea is to put yourself anywhere in the network, and that's what the sensor is trying to do. So it's simulating a real-world client experience. And the benefit to you is that you can validate wireless performance in your critical venues and other high-value locations. What we want to do is be able to learn about potential issues before our users and our clients start complaining to us. So the sensors are combined with DNA Center, and they when they're strategically deployed in your campus, they provide a proactive wireless monitoring solution. So we'll see in the demo that we can apply some pre-scripted health checks and tests, and then the active sensor is going to simulate a client machine. And that means that no longer do you need to send an engineer, or does the IT team have to be present in the building or on that particular floor or in that meeting room to be able to troubleshoot. So in this day and age where we may not have everyone in the office every day, the ability for your IT team to have the confidence that the Wi-Fi is working, but also to be able to troubleshoot as if they were a client without actually being on site is of enormous benefit. And if we have a look at some of the sensor tests that are actually available. So when we configure these devices, they have a number of different categories for the tests that we can configure. And as you can see on the screen here, there's numerous tests. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but to give you an idea of how they're configured, the first category is onboarding. So that means you can configure the sensor to join the wireless network in your campus in the same way any wireless client device would. So it's a basic onboarding tests that would cover association, authentication, and DHCP. So the sensor is looking to be able to get onto the network and receive an IP address. If that's the case, then it marks those tests as having passed. The next category is RF assessments. That's all about checking the data rate and monitoring the signal-to-noise ratio for your for a given SSID. And again, if there's no anomalies or any outliers in those tests, then the sensor will mark the RF assessment as a pass, and so on and so forth. So we can, with network services, we can check DNS, resolve FQDNs, and make sure our DNS servers are working. We can connect as both a Radius client and an authenticator. So pretending to be a wireless LAN controller to make sure that our Radius servers are operating as they should be. And then there's various other performance, application connectivity, and email tests. So for example, you can check to make sure a critical web server is available from your Wi-Fi network. You can make sure that Outlook webmail, for example, is available, again, from a particular Wi-Fi network. So there's a broad range of tests here, and to give us the confidence that the client experience for our Wi-Fi networks is up to scratch. So that's a brief overview of the sensors, and we'll get into some more of that in the demo. So I'm going to pass back to Jean. He's going to show you through our deployment of DNA Center and SD Access, and how DNA Assurance can help us see what's going on in the network.
Thanks, Greg. Let me just... Thanks, Haley. So hopefully now you're going to be able to see my screen. So what do we have here? And this is the main landing dashboard on DNA Center. And it will show you, as you see here, like firstly, an assurance summary. So health of your network devices, of your wireless clients and work clients, and the critical issues that you have had in the last 24 hours, trends and insights, and network snapshot with your sites, network devices, application policies that might be failing, for example, or have any errors, and DNA licenses, how they are, images, and so on. There is an overview here of everything, and then you can actually edit it as you want. So you may have different elements in the dashboard, and depending on what's your requirement. So as I mentioned before, the main 4 elements and how DNA Center is structured is design. They are design, policy, provision, and assurance. And you can see that from the menus here on the top, you can go to each of those. Design, as the name implies, is where you actually tell DNA Center where your sites are, and how many there are, how many floors there are per site, and it's where you build your topology of your sites. As you will see afterwards, and as I mentioned before, whatever you configure in the most general global part of the network, it will just go into every other layer of the hierarchy. If you configure something just for the I don't know, UK sites, it's just going to apply to all the UK sites, and that's how it works. Then you have the policy, which, as the name implies, is just to apply the different policies that you want to do, and you can segment your virtual networks in the case that you're doing SDA. And you can create the scalable groups and define which groups can talk to which other groups or apps and all of that kind of stuff. On provisioning is where your new devices, you sort of in that place, you onboard them into the network, and then you say, okay, this device is going to be into this specific site that you previously defined on the design section. And it's also where you actually push the config to the devices. And assurance, which is a bit that we're going to focus on today, is, as I mentioned before, it's all about monitoring and insights from the network. So let's just now briefly review what's our current deployment, our SDA deployment. So this is our deployment in London. As you see, we have 3 edge nodes and a couple of core or border nodes. And we have it in this way quite simply because our office is divided in 2 floors. And so we have 1 edge stack on one floor and 1 edge stack on the other one. And then we have another one that we're using for the showcase facilities. And these are the access points that we have so far connected, and that they are connected to the edge nodes. And you have here 2 wireless sensors that we have deployed in the offices. And if we want to see specifically where we deploy these wireless sensors, let me just show you here. If we go just to the 3rd floor. So this is the 3rd floor of our offices. And for those of you that are familiar with our offices, and this is like the main entrance, this is the reception. We deployed, you can see here, this is one of the active sensors, and this is the other active sensor. You might wonder why we deploy them specifically there. Well, it just makes sense for us. For example, it makes sense to have it here in what is our boardroom, because a lot of our most important meetings happen here. So we obviously want to make sure that connectivity there is top-notch. And we also deploy another one here in our showcase facilities. In this case, well, because a lot of you have been there, and this is where we showcase our solutions to clients and everything. So obviously, it also makes sense for us to make sure that the internet is completely perfect there. And that is talking from the point of view that you just deploy 2 or 3, but in reality, we want to deploy like many different in all the different meeting rooms so that we make sure that they are always running tests. So now let's just jump into the assurance bit. So initially, when you hit into assurance, this is the overall health dashboard on the assurance page. And it, again, it shows you a summary of how your network is performing, how your devices are performing. So you have here all the different devices. And you will see, like here with DNA Center, a lot of the stuff. And you get more info just by hovering and with the mouse over it, and just getting more data. Then you have a lot of places where you can just click, and it will take you to some different places, which I find it quite interesting. Here, if you select the list, you will see now the devices divided by your sites. So, and then from here, you can even jump directly into the client health page, which we will see afterwards, or you can jump directly into the network health page, and you will see afterwards. In general, as always, so most of the times, green means good, everything is good. Whenever you see red, well, you should be a bit worried, just check it or anything. And that's the color coding. If we go here into the top issues, for example, it is showing like the main issues that we have currently. We're seeing specifically for the global. So we are not filtering on any specific site, it's for a global deployment. But you can change that as you saw before, or you can even put a map. And let's say that you have 2 sites. Here we have like dummy building, and then you just select the dummy building and see how it's going there. But we don't have any device there, so there is no data to show. You can also filter and select like 3 hours, 24 hours, or anything to see more data. So you just change it, and then you will have like 7 days, for example. And then you will see how the network has been performing on the last 7 days. You can go directly into an issue, and then you'll get more information. So in this case, there is some sort of issues so that the device cannot get to the DHCP server. And here you get more detail, like the 2 devices are actually reporting that issue, and the number of times they have reported it, when was the last time that they reported it, where those devices are, etc. And you can even go into more details in the issue, and then it's going to give you a description of what is actually happening. And here you can see some of those suggested actions I was talking about before. So it gives you, okay, verify whether DHCP server is up, verify if configuration is compliant, verify DHCP server. A lot of these, for example, this one, you can run directly. So it will run this CLI command directly on the device from here. And look, you have like CLI style output as well. And that's super useful, because in that way you don't need to actually jump into the device or SSH into the device or anything. You can just go there and do it. And you could even do, and this is like from every place of DNA Center, you do Qt, and then you can go into the command runner, and then you just, by specifying the name or the IP of the device, you can jump into it directly. So you don't have to go somewhere else and do SSH and all that kind of stuff. It's super useful. And once you are logging into DNA Center, you don't have to log in again into the device. So it's some sort of single sign-on, if you will. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, as you saw, is these specific issues. I mean, the suggested actions that we saw here, they seem like quite simple, or perhaps they might be even like quite trivial for some experienced network engineers. But if you don't have the experience, or if you are just learning, you are just doing an internship or anything, or you are just not still a seasoned engineer, these actions will actually help you a lot to start going into the issues. And you might have someone less experienced just look into all of these issues and then start selecting those and even fix some of them if they can do it by themselves. And if not, just pass it through to the other team so that they will have a look afterwards. And this is all I wanted to see for this moment. Then you have the links here. You can either go from there or go directly here. We can jump into, for example, let's see all the list of open issues. So here, similarly, you will have all the open issues, and they are going to be by priority. So as always, priority, if it's P1, so the lower the number, the higher or the more critical the issue is, and you have all the way to P4. In this case, we can have a look at all, or you can just filter and have a look at the specific problems. Again, you can filter based on sites, or you can filter also based if you want the last 7 days, 3 hours, 24 hours. Or as I was mentioning before, you can, because you can go back up to 14 days. The thing is that you can have only 7 days applied at a time. So it's not going to be able to show you 14 days in one go. So this is super good. And always, and you will notice this as we go through the different dashboards, you have here at the top a baseline so that you can see what has happened. And depending if you have selected 24 hours, 3 hours, or anything, you can see accordingly what has been happening. And by hovering with the mouse, you have a high-level idea of how things are progressing. You can even double-click to focus on a specific slot of time if that was the case. So that's very useful, and to go into the different issues that we have had. And by the way, these DHCP and DNA issues are sort of expected by us because those are like our secondary servers, which at the moment are down because we're in the process of changing those from one location to another within our data center. So that's why they are still there, but hopefully afterwards they're going to be fixed. And then if we jump into the network health then, it's going to show a very similar sort of summary, but just focusing on the network. It's not going to show you clients or anything. And you can see the number of routers that you have access. If you hover over, you will see how was the health of your devices overall. You can, again, just go to list or to map, and then you can select a specific site and just focus on that. There are like different trends. You can select between 2.4 or 5 gigahertz if you wanted to. And it's going to show you the network devices that you have. And you can filter, and for example, you can only see, you want to only see access points, you see access points. You want to see just those that have bad health, well, you just focus on those that have like poor health. At the moment, we don't have any with poor health. You go to fair, okay, we have 3 that have fair health. So again, because we don't have such a huge deployment and we have only one site, it doesn't look as interesting. But just imagine that you're deploying this and you have over 40 sites spread across the globe, and you have over 300, 400, 500 devices. So this is super useful just to go quickly into those that might need your attention. So let's see, for example, if I wanted to go into these devices showing like health 6 or anything. That's an wireless access point. If you go there, you jump into what would be called a device 360 view. And a device 360 view is nothing else than the assurance showing you all the information that it has for that specific device. So from the point of view of that specific device. So again, you have here the timeline, and you can change between the last 24 hours, 7 days, 3 hours. And then here you have like the device health overall, and just by hovering over it, and you have, for example, in this case, the noise and that you have there for the access point, the interference, and so on. Obviously, these bits change a bit depending on the device, so you won't get, for example, the same data plane information on an access point or on a router. So it will change accordingly depending on the device. As well, you can focus on specific bits in time if you wanted to. Let's just go to 7 days. And it will show you all of that. You can just double click and focus on something very specific. and it will tell you if you have any issues, that data will be shown here. It will show you the network topology, so you see that this access point is connected to this specific edge node. If you wanted to, you can also jump directly into that edge node and have a similar view from there. And here you have the event viewer, which will show you the specific events that you may have. Then you can do path trace directly from the device here. You just run it, put the IPs, and that's it. You're just doing a ping from that specific device to a specific server or anything, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And then you have here more detailed information. I mean, there is like a lot of information if you want to go over all of it, but it's just simple on the way that you can move from one way to another. And that's what is like very nice about this. You just simply move from one way to another, and you just check if everything is all right. And that before, that would have taken like much more time. Just going to the specific device or going to a specific monitoring tool and select the device and filter and this and that. So it's quite powerful, and a lot of this stuff can be also customized. So it's very good. Let's see now. Let's go here. Let's show you another dashboard. So we have reviewed the network, the client, and the device 360. Let's see the client dashboard. So here we have the client dashboard, and then we have either wireless clients and wired clients. Here, as you can see, we have had like the wireless has been like very good, and the wireless, the wireless have been very good, and the wire instead have been like up and down, up and down, up and down. What is it really happening here? So if we want to find out, we can just go here and see that, well, at the moment it's fine, but perhaps here, and we just double click here, and we just focus on this bit, we see that the issue was that 37 of the 56 devices were not onboarded, and then there was an authentication issue. You can go here and just go view details, and look, it gives you all the details, like the top reasons for them to fail. All of them were authentication issues, and it tells you which devices were there. So you can see that all of these are Cisco IP phones, so telepresence phones that we have at our offices. So these, even if this is flagged as bad, is something that we're expecting, because what is happening is that they're trying to do 802.1x authentication, but they don't talk 102.1x authentication, so they just fall into MAB authentication, and that's how we have it configured in our policy for access. So that's why it's giving that behavior there. We're gonna fix it afterwards when we have a bit more time, but it's nothing like to worry about. As you can see, also it shows you like some average and trends. So you can see trends on how it's been now, how it's been like during the past time, what has happened. For example, for onboarding times, it says that wire clients are failing and are over what they consider the threshold for authenticating into the network. Then you have clients count per SSID and physical devices connected. I mean, as I mentioned before, a lot of info, and you can just filter based on what you're looking into. If we go, for example, assurance dashboard, application health, the issue, because we don't have anyone in the offices, we cannot see much here. And the same applies with trends and insights. If I try to go here it's not because we don't have anyone, but because we activated it like 3 weeks ago. And as you can read here, it takes up to 4 weeks for DNA Center to send all the data to the cloud, and for the cloud to sort of baseline it and say, okay, now I have enough information to start showing you what I consider is normal, what is not normal, all that kind of stuff. So because I don't have it at the moment, I have here also open from DNA Center, from dCloud, which is from Cisco, their demo environment. So just to show you how it would look like if we had some applications running in our network at the moment. So if we go here, health, we go very quickly to application health. You can see it shows you very similar sort of dashboard where it says how your applications are performing, what are the main applications, and what's the total usage of those, and what's the health of relevant applications. So as you have noticed, a lot of these, either the devices or the users or the applications, DNA Center and Assurance, they will give you a health score. Based on that is that you're going to assume if they are performing well or performing bad. And this self-score, as you will see afterwards, you can slightly modify it, and you can modify those thresholds so that you can define what is good and what is bad. However, they come pre-configured, and for the applications, if it's a video application or a voice application or anything, obviously then the main bits is about ensuring latency and no drop of packages and that kind of stuff. If it's just for data, then it's a bit more relaxed. But it comes all for default, and you can modify it as well. So for example, for MS Office 365, it hasn't been like a great experience, and mainly it's because it's detecting a lot of network latency and a lot of packet loss sometimes. So then you can go into it, into the detail, and see what's been happening or anything. So let's just show you also from here, from Cisco web page, what's the trend and insights that you can see. So for example, here you see 5 gigahertz experiencing deviations in radio throughput over the past few weeks. So if you click into it, you get way more data. And look how amazing this is. Like, you can see that week 1, it's been more or less here, the throughput for the wireless, and then week 2 the same, week 3 the same, and then week 4, for some reason, there is this IP here that has a throughput of 1 bit per second. So DNA Center certainly doesn't know what the issue is or anything, but it knows that it's just different. It's not the normal behavior. So it's highlighting it to you. It might be that you were expecting it, that's fine. But if not, you can just go and look into it, which is very, very good and helpful. Hopefully this is a bit, I was saying that afterwards it might get a bit more automated. It might even give you some instant answers if you allow it to, and do some smart stuff, or at least smarter than what it's already doing. So this is all I wanted to show you about assurance. Oh, just before we finish, I want to show you also, look, if you go here into issue settings, you see all of the predefined issues that you have here in DNA Center. At the moment, there are 183, but they are currently being updated by the tag team or by Cisco. And each time they detect something that they can potentially track, they just add it here, and you will get those updates. So, for example, there are some that are based on artificial intelligence. So you can see excessive failures to associate, high deviation from the baseline, or something similar. These ones you can easily enable or disable them, change the priority. I cannot do it because I have read-only access, but you will be able to do that from there. The same applies for the health score that I was talking about before for the devices. You can define if you want to say that poor CPU utilization is over 80% instead, because you are a bit more flexible. Sorry, you want to be a bit more careful, then you can change it here directly. You just press you change it, and that's it. And that's how you do it. So finally, let's jump into the sensors. So here we have the overall summary of our sensors, and this is the sensor dashboard. At the top, we have a high-level view of all of the tests that have been run so far and how they've been. In our case, we are looking at the last 24 hours. You can change it and look at the last 7 days. So it seems all super good, but perhaps here, easily we can see that there was a performance, also the performance was not as good when the test was run, and the same here. We can go even farther in time. Let's just go here. And for example, here it's not showing anything because we simply hadn't installed the sensors just yet. And then afterwards we installed them, but obviously it took some time to provision them and to have everything ready to start doing the tests appropriately. So you can see how easily it's just to go back in time and check what is happening on the network. So let's go to the last 3 hours, for example. It's not showing me anything the last 3 hours. And let's just go to today. Perfect. So we're currently running a test every half an hour. So that's why it's showing it like this. As Craig mentioned before, there are several types of tests. You have onboarding, RF assessment, network services, performance, app connectivity, and email. At the moment, we're not running any email tests, and that's why you see like not applicable here. Let's just change it to 24 hours because I'm conscious that this bit might not show. So here, depending on what you want to have a look at, you can see also like high level, which tests are passing, which tests are failing, in which locations, and anything. Here, because we have only one location, as I mentioned before, you can even like filter by sensors if you wanted to. So we have two main sensors on how they are both performing in each of these. You can, if you want to focus on something specific, you just click into it, and then you go and get more details about that specific test and about which APs that sensor is testing towards, or is connecting to and testing. So you get all of those details. You see the success. You see if there is a trend. You see the list of APs. So you just have to check whatever you want to want. Even you can like show more if you had like more information. You can just jump into it and check. You can also do so directly from here. You just click there and then go into that. It will depend if it's global or anything, and as always, you can change here if it's you want to look at all of your sensors or some specific sites and that kind of stuff. So if you jump into the sensor list, we will see our two main sensors, and then you can jump into what is called, it's very similar to device 360. It's just the sensor view and everything that specific sensor, or all the data that specific sensor can give you. Here you see some performance trends even. So at the moment it's showing association, and it's showing you this like how is the performance of this specific sensor against the performance of a top sensor of your network. This is a top sensor in your network. So here it's underperforming compared to that one. But as you see, like here and here, it's performing even better than the best performance sensor. So we have only two here, so it's not that big of a difference. It's either one or the other, but it's quite useful. You can also go into internet, downlink throughput, and you can see the throughput of both of the sensors, how they are behaving. If you go here, because I work on the 5 gig radio, and you can just, it will show you again like where the specific sensor that you are at is positioned. So it's showing you just this, and you can see the APs are nearby that this sensor is taking measures from. So it's these three here. Because as I mentioned the last time, this P is where we plan to put the APs going forward, but they are not active at the moment. Last bit I wanted to show you in Assurance is how easily it was to set up those tests. So you have here, this is our Natilik test template. You go into it and look, for example, it tells you that it's an estimated time of 9 minutes to run. These will change depending on how many tests you ask it to do, on how many SSIDs. You can change all of that here if you wanted to. At the moment, we have 3 SSIDs, and we're just testing on Natilik guest. You can change that, obviously. Then the test, here is where you define which test you want to run. So you see all of them that Craig was talking about before. At the moment, we're running DNS to Google, for example. And the performance test, we're not putting anything here, so it's using a default public server. And then you have host reachability. You can even add different ones. This one is very useful if you have internal services and you have the IPs and you want to check that they're always up. So you can put a specific IP set that you want to check. Even though anyway, DNA Center will set up like some IP SLAs, and we always check on the services that are like more important to the network. So NTP server, DHCP, DNS, all of those are checked automatically by DNA Center. But here you can put other, I don't know, internal servers that you have. You can also have an FTP added here, and you can do download or upload tests to the FTP server, and you can also do email. Out of these three, the last one, well, the first two is just check reachability to the email, whereas the last one, it checks reachability, and if you give it the credentials, it logs in and then logs out of an email account, just to do all of that tests. As you see, you can schedule where you want the test to be run, and you schedule. We're doing it every 30 minutes, but you can change it as you want. For example, here, you just change it. It doesn't allow me to do 7 minutes because this test, as you saw before, was minimum 9 minutes, so it doesn't make sense. App coverage, you can select if you want to run it on 2.4 gigahertz, on 5 gigahertz, on both, how many target IPs you want to select from there, and what's the range that it wants to listen from the IPs in terms of dBs. So as you see, very powerful and quite simple to configure, and it allows you to have peace of mind knowing that you are testing your network continuously. And I think this is all I wanted to show in this session. Hopefully it was interesting enough. As you just witnessed, I believe DNA assurance is very powerful, and it makes it extremely easy for you to monitor what's happening in the network and what's the automation you can do on the different interfaces. Then if you want to get into a bit more complex tasks, you can always do so, going directly into the CLI, or you can use the different APIs available. So thanks for listening on this bit. Now we can go back to Heli. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jan. Oh. Excellent. Thanks, Jan.
No problem.
Okay, so there's a lot of information there, and if any of you guys saw anything which sparked an interest and you wanted to go a little bit more technical and have Jan or one of the guys talk you through it in a little bit more detail, just get in touch with us and we're happy to run a demo with you and talk you through a little bit more into some of the detail with those assurance and sensor pieces. I have a couple of questions which I think Craig, you also might be able to help us with. The first one was talking about SSIDs. Can you test more than one SSID at a time?
Yes, you can. So it's a good question. You can test multiple SSIDs from a sensor. You saw there in Jan's demo, we're just testing one at the moment at Natilik, but you can add as many SSIDs as you like. The only thing to bear in mind is that test cycle. So in ours, it said it was going to take 9 minutes in the demo to go through it. If you're adding on multiple SSIDs with lots of tests, that test cycle is going to increase in time, which just means that the frequency of testing will go down as a result. So, but yeah, as many SSIDs as you need to test. And
is it agnostic, and do they have to be managed by you or third parties if you're testing these SSIDs?
Yeah, so to begin with, it was just SSIDs managed by the wireless LAN controllers that you have administrative access to, but in recent releases that's changed, so we can now also test, for example, public Wi-Fi networks. So, for example, if you were using a public Wi-Fi service in the building as well that you wanted your guests to use, but then you had your corporate networks for your own employees, then you can run tests on both those SSIDs and give you that peace of mind that all the services are up and running.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for today. And like we said, if there's anything that you have any questions for, please get in touch with us at the team, and we will hopefully be bringing you some more installments on our Natilik Live Showcase in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Heli.
Thanks, Heli. Thanks, everyone.